Okay, who can tell me what the effects of water ballast are?
The only one we know that is
Increased wing loading, increase.
Yes, increases weight, yes.
Wing loading.
Potential energy.
It's just centre of gravity forward used.
Potential energy.
Yes, it increases your energy if you're moving, or if you're high, yes.
Moves the CG forward usually.
Yeah, fairly minor point, but a lot of gliders have tail ballast to compensate for that. So it can make a slight change to the CFG, but not something we'd normally worry about.
Fly faster for the same.
So yes, it gives you the same LD at a higher speed.
Yeah.
So it basically moves the polar curve
Forward.
to the right. Yeah.
Gives you something to drink instead of landing a long way away.
It does move the polar curve, but not quite to the right. It expands the polar curve, if you like. So every point on the polar curve expands away from the origin of the curve, of the plot, and it expands by the square root of the weight increase. So if your weight increases by 44%, then each point on the polar curve moves by 12%. Yes?
Settles the glider down in rough air.
Sorry?
It settles the glider down in rough air. That's the best thing I like about it.
Anything else?
Increases penetration.
Well, that's this one here.
When you dump it.
Okay, it increases your sink rate in thermals. Higher sink rate.
Raise the stall speed.
Yeah. Higher stall speed. And how much does the stall speed increase?
Well, the square root is.
The weight increase, yeah. Okay, I guess those are the main things. The ones that we really want to look at tonight are this one and this one, I guess. So once again, on the polar curve, you can see that with water ballast on board, the same glide ratio occurs at a significantly higher speed. You can also see the sink rate increases. So while we're thermaling, it has an impact. And the stall speed increases. So what does that mean for us? This chart's interesting because the stall speed increases. It means the thermaling speed increases because you're always thermaling a few knots above the stall speed. So instead of thermaling at, say, 45 knots with a 40-degree angle of bank and a radius of circle of 65 metres or a diameter of 130 metres, you've now got to increase the speed to probably 55 knots, and that's increasing our circle diameter by about 50%. So we now our thermaling circle is about 50% bigger, and we have to have a bigger circle because of the increase in thermaling speed, basically. So our stall speed increases by, if our weight increases by 41%, our stall speed increases by 19%. Yeah, my earlier numbers were wrong, weren't they? So 20% is 1.44. Okay, so I guess that's the main thing about, the main negative is the increase in thermal diameter and increase in thermaling speed. But of course on the plus side, we can see that we get quite an increase in cross-country speed, assuming we achieve the same climb rate. So we're probably going to suffer a climb rate penalty of something like half a knot, I would expect, or maybe 1 knot. Yeah. Now another big disadvantage with water ballast is the manoeuvrability of the glider. Because it slows down your roll rate, the manoeuvrability in roll is less, and so your ability to make those quick fine adjustments in thermaling is reduced. So your thermaling is not going to be quite as good. And also the extra weight means you don't have as good a feel, so you can't feel the acceleration in the thermal as well. And as Sid says, it smooths out the ride, so you don't feel accelerations as much. So when should you carry water ballast and when should you drop it? Can you put on water ballast while you're flying? Clearly not. So you should always take off with maximum water ballast. If you think it's going to be a day when you might want some water ballast, then use maximum water ballast. And so the question then is, when do you drop some water ballast and how much do you drop? Well, for my glider, I would say that if I'm not getting a 3 knot climb rate, then I would start dropping some water ballast until I was at least achieving a 3 knot climb rate. So anything less than 3 knots climb, I would drop water ballast. If it's a rough and turbulent day and I feel that I would get a much better climb rate without water ballast because I'm going to be able to thermal better, then I might even drop it at a slightly higher climb rate. So it's a bit hard to tell.
I guess you've got an issue like though, if you were going to do a cross-country run, you might not get 3 knotters early on in the piece, but you know they're going to come up later on. So
if you're expecting the climb rate to increase, yeah, sure, hang on to it.
Hang on to it.
Yeah.
It's so balanced, like, well, I'll get the 3 knotters now, but I'll be all right afterwards because I'm doing well here, you know.
Yeah. Another time you would drop it, so drop less than 3 knot climb rate. You would drop it if you get low. If you get low, then A, you don't want to have it when you land, but B, you're going to climb better without it. So if you get low, you've got a better chance of getting away if you don't have water ballast. So you're going to drop it when you get low, which is another reason that you should use a conservative glide ratio when you're gliding so that you don't get too low and therefore you reduce the risk of having to drop your water ballast. Because as soon as you do drop your water ballast, you're going to reduce your average cross-country speed. So if you drop it because you're low, then you're probably going to reduce your cross-country speed by 10 knots. Something like 10 knots when you get back up again.
When you say you drop it at 3 knots, you don't dump at all.
No, drop enough to allow you to get a 3 knot climb rate. And I think with older gliders like a Cirrus, it's probably more like 4 knots. So if you're not getting 4 knots, it's probably worth dropping some at least until you can achieve 4 knots.
Not because of the lower capacity of water, you mean?
Yeah, look, I'm not really quite sure why. I haven't looked at charts and things, but I know when I was flying a Cirrus, 4 knots was about the number that I would use. With the LS8, you can see from this data that 3 knots is about right. Yeah, so you need to know how long it takes to drop so that you can dump it in segments, say 25% at a time. So test it out. What else do we need to say about water ballast?
I think ice.
Ah, yes, temperature. Okay, good point. Temperature. What temperature does water freeze at?
0.
You already see. Now, when a few of us did our 1,000k flight from Southern Cross, we had a freezing, we were getting to 16,000 feet towards the end of the day, 16,000 feet. And the freezing level was roughly 13,000 feet. So as soon as we got above 13,000 feet, we were at risk of icing. I didn't drop any water ballast because obviously we weren't above 13,000 feet for that long at a time. We're going up and down.
What do you mean you're at risk of what? You're at risk of what?
Freezing water.
The water, you're not, 180 litres of water's not going to freeze like that. It'll start
How much is in your
slowly.
tail?
Hmm?
How much is in your tail tank?
3 litres.
Is it insulated? No. So it's the tail tank that's the biggest risk. You can't dump the tail tank separately to the main tank. But there have been cases, not in Australia that I know of, but there have been cases of people damaging their wings by letting the water freeze in the wings
During flight?
during flight.
Nah.
Well,
Overnight, if they leave it overnight.
am I lying?
I think in Europe that'd be very...
Ask Fitz. You ask Fitz. Fitz will tell you about it.
Right, I'll ask
Okay, so clearly there is a time lag between reaching 0 degrees and the water actually freezing. Whether you want to take that risk and allow some time, how much time, I don't know. I know Paul Rose did a test. He put a 3 litre or 4 litre water container in the freezer, in the fridge at Beverley, and after several hours it still wasn't frozen. So, you know, there is definitely a time lag, and you've got a bit of time to play with.
It will ice, you know, the ice will start on the outside, so we're insulating the stuff in the middle.
You don't need the 60 litres of the wing to freeze. You only need your outlet to freeze, which has got a wind chill factor.
No.
If that freezes, you can't dump it.
No, it's going to take you about an hour to get down from that height. 13,000 foot.
You're not at risk of freezing it up when you land, but you might be at risk of freezing it if you wanted to dump it while you're up at 16,000 feet.
Yeah.
Higher you go, the colder it is as well, so you're 9 degrees at 16. It expands when it freezes anyway, that's the problem.
Freezes a lot, right?
Anyway, you need to be aware of the freezing level. You can find it out before you leave from the forecast, and you can monitor the temperature as you fly, so that you can make sure you don't freeze it up. If you're just going above the freezing level for short periods, you're probably okay, but you've got to make that assessment. You certainly don't want to bust your wings because you've forgotten about it.
Greg, last year we had that day when we thought we were pretty high. For a long time we all went out and got glycol, put in our tanks with water.
I think your manual will say don't do that, but anyway. I don't know why it says don't do that, but it does say don't use antifreeze.
I'm not big with the plastic. Oh, yeah, the plastic.
Perhaps it melts the resin or something. Yeah, okay, so I guess those are the main things with water. In Australia, if it's going above 4,000 feet probably, then you're going to get some benefit from water ballast. Yeah.
But there must be a time when you say it's a waste of time putting water ballast.
Well, certainly in a competition you take it every day, but on some days it would be dropped pretty early because you're not getting 3 knots average climb, or you're not getting very high and you don't want to be continually on the verge of dropping it. A lot of people will keep it until the end of the first glide, or they might try the first climb and see how it goes and then drop it while they're climbing.
But you wouldn't drop it before the start?
Well, I can think of one day last year when I should have dropped it before the start. I think if it's only the problem with dropping it before the start is that conditions might improve. But, you know, if you're only getting 3,000 feet and ground level's here, you want to be in that zone there or higher if you can. So that's only, you know, that's about 2,000 feet, isn't it? By the time you allow a bit of height down here. So you've only got 1,000 feet to play with. The thermal strength is only going to be about 2 knots, probably, maybe 3 knots. So the thermals aren't strong enough to support water anyway. You're going to be paying a penalty because you won't climb as fast. You won't get centred as quickly because you don't have the same feel. So you're not centering the thermals more quickly enough. There's really just no benefit in having it on a low day. Yeah, so I think in a competition even, if you're sure that it's only going to be 3,000 feet, you're better off without it. From the start, from takeoff. I mean, the problem I had on that day was, you know, I hang on to it and there was cloud everywhere, but the first climb was 5 knots. So I thought it was going to happen again.